Okay, we'll begin with the prayer, please. Master of all worlds, highest power, merciful parent of compassion, in your presence, eternal one,
source
of strength for us as you have been for our ancestors, we very humbly acknowledge you. What are we? What is our life that you have done such great kindness to us? Therefore, we place our appeals before you so that you may forgive and absolve us of all our faults and failings, that our faults never become barriers between us and you. And may it be your desire to prepare our hearts to feel awe and love for you. May you listen to these words of ours, and may you open our encumbered hearts to the mysteries of your Torah. May this, our study, be a source of pleasure before your throne of glory, like sweet incense. May you shower down upon us the light of our soul source in all the ways by which we define ourselves. May the sparks of your holy servants, through whom you have revealed these words to the world, shine and sparkle. May their merit, their ancestors' merit, and the merit of their Torah, their innocence and their holiness, stand for us so as to prevent us from stumbling when we study these words. In their merit, may our eyes be illumined by what we study, as is the saying of the sweet singer of Israel, open my eyes, that I may gaze into wonders of your Torah. May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. For it is the eternal who grants wisdom. It is from his mouth that knowledge and understanding issue forth. Na 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 na. Oh na na na. Na 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 na. Oh na na na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 So we had a little bit of a break. So I think we should start on page 334, 334. And the subject is still about, as it was triggered by the text in Vayetze, the beginning of Jacob's dream. So the Zohar is wondering about the relationship between dreaming and prophecy, and in general, dreams that seem to be some kind of connective experience with heaven, and yet not quite at the same level as prophecy itself. And then we noticed that the Zohar says that these differences are not so hard and fast, that there can be a kind of a mixture of these qualities, one with the other. So I think what we'll do is we'll start, just to sort of like get ourselves back into the swing of things. Let's start from 334, from the third line on the top of the page, where we're talking about Solomon's dreams. Okay, so yes, Beryl, you have a question?
No, well, you don't want my Zoom there to be left out.
God forbid, God forbid. Please, Beryl, do us the honor of reading tonight.
It is written, God appeared to Solomon in a dream by night and said to him, ask what I should give you. Now you might say here in a dream, what authority does a dream have to do this? But here rung merged with rung, upper rung with lower rung. For until now, Solomon was incomplete. As soon as he attained perfection, it is written, Yud-He Vav-He gave Solomon wisdom. And similarly, the wisdom of Solomon increased, for the moon became full, the temple was built, and then Solomon saw wisdom eye to eye and had no need of dreams.
Okay. So we have this idea that Solomon is the beneficiary of this dream that seems to be coming from heaven, from a divine source. And God is asking Solomon, what do you want? I'll give you anything you want. What's your greatest desire? And Solomon says, I don't want riches. I don't want fame, fortune. I want wisdom. So that's what he gets. But the Zohar says, okay, if this is a dream, then let's understand what's happening. How does this work out to be a dream? If it's a dream where the person who is dreaming is being communicated with and being told, you can ask me anything and I'll give it to you. So this is a much higher source than just a dream. The dream is an angelic communication. We had this before. Gabriel is the master of dreams. Gabriel isn't the boss. Gabriel doesn't have control over giving things to people. If they want something, then Gabriel can just give it. Gabriel only listens to what God tells Gabriel to do. That's the definition of an angel. So here, where it's open-ended and the communication is, all right, Solomon, what would you like? That must be a different source of communication. So what kind of dreaming are we talking about? So as they say, mimonavshach, either way, if it's a dream, then it can't be asking, can't be active in that way. If it's not a dream, why is it called a dream? So in what sense is this a dream? So their answer is, the Zohar's answer is that it's a mix. It is a dream, but it's a dream that's suffused with the divine. The divine is using the dream mechanism or the dream as a vehicle to communicate with Shlomo. So then the implicit question is, why all the roundaboutness of it? If God wants to talk to Shlomo, then let God talk to Shlomo, and that would be, of course, prophecy. So why hold off from the prophecy? If God wants to talk to Shlomo, then let it be direct. So here we have the idea that no, until now Shlomo was incomplete. So Shlomo is not yet fully eligible, fully meritorious to experience God directly, as it says later on, eye to eye. So he's not yet fully developed, and he has to, as special as he is, he has to still work within certain limitations. And those limitations, therefore, make it only possible for God to speak to Solomon through the vehicle of a dream. Even though it's God who is rung with rung, right? The higher power of God is coming forth, but there's a kind of a filter. There's a kind of a barrier that mitigates or that transforms even the experience from a direct communication with God into this more dreamlike experience. So until such time as Shlomo would become worthy, he's not going to experience God directly in a prophetic way. However, as it says here, as soon as he attained perfection, then we have that God directly gives Shlomo the wisdom. So this is what Shlomo asked for. This is what God asked Shlomo, what would you like me to give you? So now we see that once Shlomo achieves perfection, then the channel is cleared and opened up, and prophecy is what's made possible, and wisdom, which is chokhmah, which is where prophecy comes down from, is now directly accessible to Shlomo because of his attainments. So in what way was did he attain perfection? So it says here the temple was built, and that was one of the things that he needed to do. He accomplished his mission. And also he's married, right? As opposed to Jacob, we talked about him before. Jacob was precluded from prophecy because of his bachelorhood. Okay. The wisdom of Solomon increased, for the moon became full. Okay, so let's read the note 115, please.
Moon became full. According to the Midrash, just as the moon does not become full until the 15th day of its cycle, so it remained incomplete until the glorious reign of Solomon in the 15th generation from Abraham.
Okay, so Shlomo, when Shlomo finally comes into his own, Shlomo is the 15th step from Abraham going forward. So that's when the moon becomes full. This is, of course, the time of the month that Passover and Sukkot occur, right? They are both timed to occur at the full moon. And here as well, the building of the temple coincides with the 15th generation, and now the full moon is attained. And what is the full moon? The full moon is the fullness of Shekhinah's presence in the world. Right? She is the Levana, she is the moon, and the presence of God in the world waxes and wanes. Sometimes it's more apparent, sometimes it's more intensely felt, sometimes people have more easy access, and other times it seems elusive or distant or non-existent. So this was the perfect confluence of all of these factors together. Shlomo did what Shlomo was meant to do at his moment in history, and brought about the fulfillment that that enabled God's presence to be fully connected to the world. That's the fullness of the moon. Okay, and from then on, this phrase is an intriguing phrase. From then on, Solomon saw wisdom eye to eye, direct communication with the source of all wisdom, and had no need of dreams. Right? Dreams were not necessary for him to be able to get any kind of intimations of you know, what God wanted of him or what he wanted of God. We're going to come back to that phrase soon. All right. Any comments at this point?
Hello? You froze. Oh boy.
We need you to read.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you froze. I don't know.
You froze. I know. I'm unstable. I'm just.
You're ready for me to read? Is that what you're saying?
So I don't know what words of wisdom you lost, but yeah, Craig.
Just one comment. I learned at the Seder this year that 15 is also the number of steps that the high priest would ascend to get to the altar. So
Not exactly. Well, that's not quite what you learned.
okay.
What you learned is that there were 15 steps to get up to the Temple Mount.
Oh, up to the temple. Okay.
Not the high priest, but outside the Temple Mount, there were 15 steps. Every pilgrim that came to the temple had to go up the plateau to get to the top of the mountain, to get to the Temple Mount where the temple structure was. There were 15 steps. That's the Shir Hamalot. That's the 15 Psalms of Ascent. So the steps for the altar actually wasn't steps for the altar. The altar had a ramp. It had no steps. It had a slanting ramp for the altar. Okay. So back to this, but thank you for bringing that up. Okay, here we go. So now we're at the last paragraph on 334. Go ahead.
After he sinned, he needed dreams as before.
So let's stop for a second. Let's stop. So I just want to pause at this point. So here's this guy, Shlomo, who attains this remarkable, pure connection with God, eye to eye, and he fulfills the great dream of not a temporary structure that's a tent of meeting, but a permanent house of God. He does everything amazing, and he is then blessed with divine wisdom straight from the source of wisdom. And then the Zohar, of course, knows the story, and we're all supposed to know the story. We all read the Bible. After he sinned. So I just want to pause and say, this is the remarkable fact, is that just because he attained that pinnacle of purity and perfection and goodness and wisdom and divine communion, doesn't mean that he's not going to sin the next minute. And of course, we had that, of course, with the golden calf, with the entire people of Israel at Mount Sinai. But here, it's with people, it's more abstract, it's more collective. Everybody's in their own, at their own level. But here's a person who the word Shlomo, of course, has the word shalom in it, but also it has perfection, completion, shalem, shlemut, the full moon. He is the person who brings about this historical, meeting of destiny and of completion. And then he sins. So this is just, it's not something that should be just forgotten about. This is the reality of what it means to be a human being. In Pirkei Avot, one sage says, "Don't believe in yourself until your day of death. Don't think that you've got it made. Don't think that you've attained a certain level, that you've reached a certain kind of perspective or a certain kind of wisdom or a certain kind of righteousness. Don't believe in yourself, because it's always possible for a person to sin." And with that background, that it's interesting to me to get that phrase again, the need for dreams. He needed dreams as before. So I think that in general, and it'll come out one more time on the next page, that phrase, I think in general, the phrase is meant to be taken as, in order to have any kind of communication with the divine, he couldn't do it through prophecy, through direct contact anymore, and he needed to avail himself of dreams. But I think that there's something more, what can I say, to me, more emotional in that word need. Because even though he messes his life up, literally, royally, I mean, he really messes himself up, he still has something of Shlomo in him. And he has a need for dreaming. He has a need for reaching out somehow or other in some whatever messed up or imperfect or occasional way when it is perfect. There are moments, there are nights when he needs to dream, when he needs, and we're not talking about just the dreams that you and I have, where he needs to get back to that dreaming, to get back to that sense of wonder, to that sense of potential, of promise, that God could come to him and say, "I love you. What do you want? I'll give it to you. I'll help you out." So I really think that phrase carries with it a certain kind of weight. It's not just a kind of a heuristic distinction. Well, there's prophecy and then there's dreams. After he sinned, he needed the dreams. There was still something about him that wanted to reach out and connect, but it's not going to be through prophecy. Okay. Anybody want to chime in at all? Okay. So you know what? Let's start from that paragraph from the beginning again, please, Beryl.
After?
Yeah.
Okay. After he sinned, he needed dreams as before. So it is written, who had appeared to him twice.
Right. This is God describing that God had appeared to him in dreams twice. So the commentators explain, in the beginning he appeared to him in dreams. Then he reached this perfection that allowed him to transition over into prophecy, and then at the end back into dreams.
Was it twice and no more? Rather, the aspect of dream manifested twice, the aspect of wisdom every day. Even so, the aspect of dream excelled that of all other humans, since rung merged with rung, vision with vision.
So every day, in the end, Shlomo still had that wisdom, but the dreams were manifested before and after, and nevertheless, says the Zohar, Shlomo is Shlomo. So even when he has these dreams, they're not everybody else's dreams. There's something still there. And it excelled that of all other humans. Now it takes two, according to the Zohar and according to the kind of biblical images that we're talking, it takes two to dream, right? It takes, because God has to participate in the dream too. It's not just our own self-generated dreams. That's what we have on a regular basis, but we're talking here about communicative dreams where there's something that's opened up between the heavenly realm and human consciousness. So there is this holding on the part of God to respond or to even communicate, to pour into Shlomo that divine impulse. But Shlomo doesn't turn around, right? Shlomo is not a success story in his biography. In the end, he's not some Baal Tshuva who sees the errors of his ways. Mark wrote something in the chat. Does he sin knowing it is a sin? He has wisdom. Yeah, we say at the Seder, we say at the beginning of the Seder, after we have the four questions, which I hear that in Geraldine's family, the four questions were asked in a really special way by a 3.5-year-old who did a great job, right? So we get all these questions, and then the answer is, that's the answer. So the answer is, why do we do all these things? Because we were once slaves and then God took us out. That's the end of the answer. So we should be able to eat dinner about 6 minutes into the Seder. That's the answer. We finished. We told the story. That's it. But then we immediately go, and we start elaborating on what the implications are of this. And then we say, therefore, afilu kulanu chachamim, kulanu nivonim, kulanu yodim et haTorah, kulanu zkenim, even if we are the most learned, the most wise, the most erudite of scholars and of people, nevertheless, it's a mitzvah for us to tell the story, because it has nothing to do with wisdom. The story has nothing to do with wisdom. And our lives, we should live our lives with great wisdom. And wisdom is a blessing. God gives a wisdom to Shlomo, but wisdom doesn't guarantee anything, because we're not pure rational beings. We're not pure cerebral beings. We're not pure calculating beings. We can have great wisdom, but we don't always exercise our wisdom. We can have great wisdom, but the wisdom is not strong enough to counter other impulses and passions or agendas that we have. We can have contrasting, wisdoms. We can have one wisdom that sees, that the world should be in a certain kind of way and we should act a certain kind of way. And then we have another wisdom which says, hey, if we don't act this way, then I won't get this, or this won't happen, and this has to happen. So wisdom in and of itself is inadequate, and it's not necessary, and it's not sufficient in terms of leading a righteous life.
So there's a famous passage in Plato where he says, does someone do evil because he thinks it's good, or does someone do evil knowing that it's evil? So your answer is that you sin, you do evil, knowing that it's evil, and you do it anyway.
Sometimes.
That's your answer.
That's sometimes.
No, I'm not saying not sometimes, but
Right. The,
but
answer, the way you posed it in Plato's question, the answer is yes. The answer is both. Sometimes people sin thinking that they're doing the right thing, and sometimes people sin on purpose. Yes.
yeah, but I'm curious about the times when you sin on purpose.
Yeah. Go ahead. What about it?
So this is just the whole issue that in this world we have to live with evil, sin, pain, etc., etc.
As long as we're human, I don't see any way around it.
So the human condition has this and now I want to say necessary. I'm not sure you want to say necessary. You maybe just want to say actual. Because there's necessary, there's actual, there's merely possible. So is it, where do you put evil? I mean, the reason I want to say necessary is that gets God off the hook. Because if evil is necessary, then God just has to accept evil as part of the world. And we talked about this year after year after year after year after year. But it has real bite with Shlomo. Because if Shlomo can't resist sin, who can?
He should know better, literally, right? He should know better.
Literally. All right, I'm finished.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know, in terms of those terms, what to use. We have a verse in Proverbs that says there's no such thing as a righteous person who doesn't sin. Ein tzadik ba'aretz asher yaseh tov v'lo yechta. A righteous person doing good in the world, and nevertheless, there's no such thing that such a righteous person will also not sin. So again, back to Plato, maybe they sin by mistake, but it's still a sin, right? Our tradition tells us that you can sin by mistake. You can do something bad that has bad results. Even if you didn't mean it, it's still bad. But I think that there are other times when, yes, it's possible to try to do the right thing, or it's possible to try to be a good person, or that the impulse doesn't come out of wanting to be a bad person. I somewhere along the line, I gave this example. When we see sometimes people act out, and they do bad things. They do something destructive, they do something wild, they do something insensitive. And often, according to the cliched wisdom, a lot of acting out is to try to get attention. Right? So where do you map that out in terms of good and evil? If a child is frustrated that they're not getting love, they're not getting attention, and recognition of their own existence, which they're entitled to, right? I mean, obviously, we don't have to weigh every single thing, and when people throw tantrums for no reason. But let's take a person who is taka, shortchanged on love and care, and then they respond by doing bad things. So, the bad things that they do, they cause pain, they cause suffering, they cause destruction. Those are bad. And in fact, while they're doing it, they may be full of rage and anger and God knows what else, and they want to cause this pain and suffering. But then underneath it, the impulse is not an evil impulse. It's a frustrated impulse. So how do we map that into this diagram of, do you do bad because you don't know, or do you do bad because you want to? I don't think it fits into that so neatly.
You brought this up a couple of weeks ago when I made a similar comment that evil is a way to draw attention to God, and then you use that same.
So that's what I said. I recall vaguely that I said something like that.
Yeah, right. but that really creates this amazing set of paradoxical problems about the relationship of human action and God's presence. Because if one of the ways that you draw God's presence is by acting badly, then it really starts to get weird. And I don't mean God's presence to punish you. I mean God's presence to say, show a little rachmanis.
Yeah, yes, weird is a very accurate term to describe human existence.
Okay, all right, I'll shut up.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll have plenty more opportunities to engage in that discussion. All right, let's leave it at that for now. Okay, so we're up to the last two lines on 334.
Now, though, toward the end of his days, more obscurely because he sinned and the moon verged on defectiveness.
So this is 1 second. This is now the Zohar acknowledging that he got worse and worse. Right. So even though, he has a trajectory of aspiring to pure wisdom, to pure connection with God, to doing what's holy, to redeeming his father's flawed legacy. That's part of his agenda at the beginning as well. But then, as he ages, he ends up just messing it up more and more and more. So the Zohar says, so that means that also, in a kind of like an analogy with whatchamacallit, the picture of Dorian Gray, right? His dreams get uglier or get more obscure, more darker and darker, because he's besmirching his own soul. The moon that he had brought to fullness is now verging on defectiveness. Why? Back to you, Errol. Why?
Why? Because the sacred covenant was violated when he engaged with foreign women. This was the condition the Blessed Holy One had stipulated with David, as is written, "If your sons keep my covenant, their sons also,
Adayad,
until forever, will sit upon your throne." What does Adayad, until forever, mean? Corresponding to what is written, as the days of the heaven over the earth.
right? That's what we say in Leinu, Kimei Hashamayim ala Haaretz.
Since Solomon failed to keep this covenant,
I mean in the Shema. Yeah, go ahead.
Since Solomon failed to keep this covenant properly, the moon began to wane and turn defective. So in the end, he needed a dream. Similarly, Jacob needed a dream, as we have said.
Okay. So we have the degradation of Solomon here, and it's portrayed in terms of his multiple wives, right? That he has foreign wives, and as the Bible tells us, he doesn't turn them to worshiping God. He allows every wife to have her own religious, practice, the cults that are, what they inherited from their own foreign nationalities, because that's what he's doing, right? He's making these political alliances through marriage and importing all of these foreign princesses with their ways of worship into Jerusalem. So that's the big accusation at the end against Shlomo. There are a few other things that he did that weren't so great, that call into question his own social and political wisdom. But this is this is the biggie, And for the Zohar, of course, this is intolerable, right? What's it called? It's called because the sacred covenant was violated. For the Zohar, the sacred covenant alludes specifically to the phallus, to the bris, and he has desecrated his bris by engaging in sexual relations with all of these idolatrous women. So this is the terrible betrayal, and this was the condition stipulated by God: if your sons keep my covenant. So usually that means, we understand it means keep the Torah, keep all of the laws that are of righteousness and so on. But the Zohar reads it in that very, very specific sexualized and genitalized way, to guard, to take care of the male bris, that it not be misused by engaging in sexual relations with the person that is improper. And we've talked about this every once in a while. That's the significance of the image of divine union between one male beloved lover and one female lover. That's supposed to be acted out in the same purity and in the same exclusiveness by every Israelite male, right? And that's part of what it means to imitate God. It's part of what it means to live in God's ways, is to be engaged in the one beloved, and no straying, no promiscuity or anything like that. So Solomon does this. Back to questions that we had a little bit before. Is this because he was just tempted by sex? Probably not. Probably he was tempted by politics. He was tempted by power. He was tempted by his thinking that this is the way he could aggrandize the Israelite kingdom, and maybe in some way he thought that in the end God would win. But his calculation wasn't correct. To a certain extent, he sort of outsmarted himself. How does that impact on your position on homosexuality? Right. So this is Mark's question back to me. The Zohar is not in favor of homosexuality. The Zohar thinks that that's, again, an abuse of one's male sexuality. On the other hand, this is not the first time that I don't buy every single thing that the Zohar says, and I think that on the let me put it this way. I'm old-fashioned in the sense that I still think that a monogamous relationship is holy. And I think that nowadays, actually, this position is getting less and less accepted. I read recently an interesting article, I think it was in the New Yorker, by Andrew Solomon, about the new push for polygamy and for polyamory. And the idea that, people should be able to love whoever they want, whenever they want, in as many ways that they want. And it's very hard to, in modern times, to argue against that. But while I don't say that male and female is the exclusive way that people can love each other, again, I've made this very, very clear in everything that I've written. Male and female is in each and every one of us, in the kind of like mythic way that the Zohar talks about it. But the Zohar's binaries are limiting. And I believe that it's possible for there to be truly sacred, loving commitment between two people who are very different from each other, even if they are of the same gender. So I mean, I take that as obvious, but it means yes, I'm not on the same page with the Zohar about that.
The reason I brought it up was that there was something very interesting on PBS tonight.
Oh wait, so let's cancel class.
What?
We can cancel class. Is it still on?
I'm sorry?
Is it still on? Can we still watch it right now?
No, it was the news.
Oh,
It was the news. There's a black gay country singer who is the biggest success ever recently. And he made this video, this mythologized video about Adam and Eve, et cetera, et cetera. And he came out as an overt homosexual in the black community. And the black church went crazy. And then there was a guy, an apologist for him on, and he was describing his video as a response to what he called, I forget his exact phrase, it was something like theologically induced pain. So hatred of oneself because of violating sexual mores, which, by the way, I represent that remark. You know, now, you know, this brings into question the whole issue of mythologizing the theological relationship in terms of human sexuality. So, you know, whatever.
yeah. So when we went through a whole process in our shul, where I tried to get people to look at the verses in the Torah with a different translation, part of the argument that I made for how necessary that was exactly that history of the terrible damage that theological position, the traditional theological position, does, not only for other people persecuting gays, but for gay people persecuting themselves and hating themselves and learning to be ashamed of themselves and killing themselves. That kind of damage is horrific, and it's real, and it's been there for a long, long time, and we have a lot of repair to do, and that's, you know, that's part of, I think, that's part of the worthwhile work that we do in these meetings together, where I hope that I don't censor too much and that I don't, push away and apologize too much. And at the same time, I try to study the tradition, study what I can find, mine it for the gold, and sift out the other stuff without simply saying, you know what, it's all, forget it. It's so discredited. Let's move on to the next thing. That's what I'm trying to do. So I acknowledge the pain and the suffering that every religious tradition has imposed on people, especially, the anti-gay kinds of things, anti-women kinds of things. These are sins that need to be recognized and confronted and seriously repaired. And how much, what constitutes a repair and what constitutes a destruction and what constitutes throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. That's the only way we're going to find that out, is by struggling and wrestling with this, all of us together. And then we'll, in another couple of generations, we'll do a correction again, if we can keep talking. 1 second. So Larry's got a comment, and then Seth's got a comment. Not Larry's comment. Neither the Tanakh nor the Midrash nor the Zohar understand the light of the moon as being a reflection of the light of the sun. Correct? Sort of, not quite. So when the moon is described as a chaser or a chaser, it says chaser, but it really is read chaser, or defective, the norm is understood to be that the moon is full. The waning of the moon is here seen as the result of a human action or misdeed rather than simply cyclical. So the last part is correct. The cyclical quality of the moon's waxing and waning is part of the rhythm of nature at this point, but that in and of itself is a pagam, is a defect, is a result of a defect, because of the original idea being that the moon and the sun should be co-equal and the moon should have its own light. The fact that the moon is the aspaklaria she'ena me'ira, that Shechina has no light of her own, but is only taking in the reflected light, is only taking in the light that the sun shines on her. This is recognized in the Zohar. It's crucial to understanding why the defectiveness of the moon is not just that she waxes and wanes, but that she is reflective and not self-generative, and they're connected. If the sun goes around and around and around also, but when we look at the sun, it's always full, and it's always lit up in the daytime, right? The reason that the moon waxes and wanes is because it goes around and around, and the sun is around some other angle, and it doesn't reflect in the same way all the time. If the moon had its own self-generated light, it wouldn't wax and wane.
The sun is Tiferet.
Yes.
So the light of Tiferet, but the moon is Shechina, and the Shechina does not have her own light.
Shechina is a container. She takes in the light of all of the other forces of the divine.
She's a receptacle.
Right. And then she gives it out. She bounces it off.
Mhm.
All right. So wait a second. And then Seth writes, can you speak to polygamy in the Torah? So prevalent and clearly not part of the sacred union. Oy. Thanks a lot.
I mean, you didn't have to go all the way to homosexuality, right? It just seems like such a clear historical legacy, or what?
Yeah, and it's not so ancient. In Jewish tradition, polygamy stopped at about 1950, because in Ashkenazi communities, polygamy was outlawed by Rabbeinu Gershon Or Agola, approximately 1000 CE, a little before that. And he made an outlawing of having more than one wife in the Jewish community. But in the Mizrahi and Sephardi communities, in the communities outside of the European, Northern European communities, polygamy existed, for another 1,000 years. And it only stopped when there was an act taken in about 1950, because of the kibbutz galuyot, because of the ingathering of the exiles, where these two communities, the Ashkenazi community and the Mizrahi community, finally had to coexist in the land of Israel, because for ages and ages, basically you had nothing to do with each other. That's why Sephardim ate kitniot on Pesach, and Ashkenazim didn't. So it didn't matter that we had differing approaches to things, because we never really interacted that much. There's a novel, it's not all that great, but by Aleph Bet Yehoshua, called something The Millennium or something like that, where it's a novel, put in something, it's set in 1000 CE or something, and it's about a meeting, a culture clash between Sephardim and Ashkenazim, and it's also in the background of the Crusades that are about to happen. It's a whole thing. But in 1950 in Israel, the Sephardi community accepted upon itself the ban on polygamy for the sake of unity among the Jewish people. So, so it's actually very, very recent that some Jewish communities, at least in theory, allowed polygamy. Your question is, what's this whole business about monogamy that I'm talking about? It's a very good question. And I think that, first of all, I don't know of a single polygamous story in the Torah that's a happy married family story, right? In every single story, there's problems because of polygamy. And in fact, in Hebrew, the name, the noun for the second wife, and for each wife, the other wife is the second wife, is tzara, trouble. That's the noun that is used to describe the, it's not an in-law, I don't know what you call it. The other wife, the partner wife, the other is called the tzara, which means the trouble. So the affliction, tsaras. So it was accepted, and yet it wasn't. It certainly wasn't elevated, as an aspirational goal. I think it's part of a patriarchal value system, which allows men sexual release in ways that it doesn't allow women. And I think that if we start deciding that, patriarchy was accepted by the Torah willingly or just realistically, but it planted seeds for us to start thinking more egalitarian, in a more egalitarian way, in a way that pushes out patriarchy as the ideal and makes human fulfillment open to everybody. Once that happens, then something like you're showing me something. Aleph Bet Yeshua, what's it called? It's called Masa El Tom HaElef. Yeah, but what was it? It's called Journey to the End of the Millennium, something like that. Thank you. So, so that's what I would argue. I would argue that yeah, we sit on the shoulders of our ancestors, and we can see a little bit further only because they're still standing. But if we want to get out of patriarchy as an ultimate, standard for a value, then polygamy's got a lot to answer, to defend itself, because it's basically about patriarchy. I mean, that's what I would say is a quick answer. But read that article. It's an interesting article. Does that respond a little bit to what you wanted what you were wondering about? No?
It just seems like the focus here is more on dimensions of this union that Solomon abrogated, right? They're not talking about the multiple wives, but the focus is the non-Jewishness here, right?
Correct. I think that would be the main point. Yes. Yes. No, that's important. You're right. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right, we can keep going.
Now, though, toward the end of his days, more obscurely.
Yeah, so I just want to again repeat what I said before, where this phrase comes in again, right? The last sentences in that paragraph. Since Solomon failed to keep this covenant properly, the moon began to wane and defective. So in the end, he needed a dream. So again, I just want to push that little extra way of reading that. There's a certain kind of, I'm reading it with a little desperation. Right? His well-laid plans, pun intended, for marrying all of these consorts did not work out. And if we want to see him as having some kind of second thoughts or some kind of other thoughts, extra thoughts, he needs a dream. He needs a dream, but that's as far as he's going to be able to get, is a dream. What do we do with the last sentence? What's the similarity between Jacob and Solomon? Similarly, Jacob needed a dream, as we have said. So that's why I think the desperation part is what's important. Jacob is in trouble. Jacob is, as we've said a million times, He's on the lam. He's running for his life. He's bereft. He doesn't know anymore, what's vouchsafed for him and what's not. What does he deserve and what not. So he's reaching out for a dream, and he's not yet ready to have full nevuah, full prophecy, but the dream will come to him, and what a dream it is. But it's part of it is the need. He's got a need for this dream. And again, sadly, for Solomon, like I said, he doesn't redeem his career. Jacob still has some good things to accomplish. Okay, now, here.
You want now or why?
I want the next paragraph. Here, Yud Hey Vav Hey.
Okay, is that where we are? Here,
So.
Yud Hey Vav Hey, yeah, that is. Yud Hey Vav Hey
Nitzav alav.
was standing upon it. Here, he saw the cluster of faith as one. Nitzav was standing upon it, as is said,
Nitziv.
a pillar of salt, a mound, for all rungs stand as one upon that ladder, all clustering in a single cluster, since that ladder is placed between two sides, as is written, I am Yud Hey Vav Hey, God of Abraham, your father, and God of Isaac. Two sides, on the right and the left.
Okay. So we've gotten to the next part of the vision in Jacob's dream. He saw the angels going up and down on the ladder, and then it says V'hinei. Ooh, look here! Wow! Right? It says that Yud Hey Vav Hey Hashem Nitzav Alav. So now the Zohar is going to be reading. What does that phrase mean? Nitzav Alav, standing, and we'll see either it's standing upon it, ladder, or standing upon him, meaning Jacob. That's what we're going to get to soon. So here we're reading it now as standing upon the ladder, and he saw the cluster of faith as one. So here is Shekhinah. Shekhinah is the ladder. Yesod is pouring into Shekhinah. Yesod is funneling all of the light from all of the rest of the divine nodes of energy, and the image that he has is of a completely unified divine image. Yud Hey Vav Hey is now manifest to him as a complete package, a complete cluster. So not separated, Shekhinah is not separated, Tiferet is not a separate, he doesn't see Chesed and Gvura as separate entities. He sees all of the unity of God together. And that's what the Zohar says, the word Nitzav, why doesn't it say Omeid? If we just take a look for a half a second, where did I put my Tanakh? I want to just take a look for a half a second. This is the verse says, right. So the word nitzav is actually used earlier for the ladder. Sulam mutzav artzas, the setup, on the land. Then it says that Hashem nitzav alav. So it doesn't say mutzav, And it also doesn't say omeid. Omeid is the more usual term for standing. God uses that verb for God's self in other places. So why nitzav? What does that mean, nitzav? And mutzav is passive. Nitzav is, even though it sounds like nifal, it's actually standing. So in what sense is it standing? So we have this very surprising association with the pillar of salt that Lot's wife turned into. When she looked back, she was told not to look back at the destruction of Sodom by the angels. She did. She turns into Vatihil Netziv Melach. She becomes a pillar of salt. So what the Zohar wants to say, though, is just like a pillar of salt, it's totally undifferentiated. Every part of the pillar is equally the same as every other part of the pillar. All the granules of salt are the same, whether they're in the middle or on top or at the bottom. That's the oneness of God. So even though we constantly are separating out Shekhinah and Tiferet and Netzach and Hod and Yesod and Malchut and all this kind of stuff, even though we're constantly differentiating these aspects of God, in the end, it's all one. Right? And that's what it means to cluster of faith, right? The Tzrora de Mehemnuta, the cluster of faith means to understand that it's all not separate and differentiated, but all one. That's what the faith really is. The Mehemnuta is about the unification of all of the aspects of God into one continuum that's not to be separated in any way.
Question, Rabbi.
Yeah, 1 second. All rungs, 1 second, stand as one upon that ladder, all clustering in a single cluster. Yeah.
Does Jacob at the end of this set up a matzeva after this experience?
That's right.
So that shoresh is used throughout the story.
That's right.
And so we can speculate on the true meaning of that shoresh, as a presence that is standing always.
That's right.
In all these different guises.
Very good. Good. Yeah. Right. Correct. Right. That's what he's going to do afterwards. He's going to take that stone and turn it into a matzeva. Right. Okay. So then we have here, I am Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. So the Zohar comments, two sides on the right and the left. The ladder is placed in between them. Okay, so the ladder is Shekhinah between these two sides. And even as we speak about this side and that side in the middle, we're also affirming that none of this is actually the way things are. There is no two sides and there is no middle. It's all one. Nevertheless, that's the only way we can talk about it, is the two sides, the right side, the left side, and the middle. The right side is Abraham, Chesed. The left side is Yitzchak, right? That's Gvura, Pachad, Din. And then there's the middle. And of course, in the end, Shekhinah is in the middle. And who else is in the middle? Jacob himself, right? So that's also part of the unification that happens here, is that Jacob is seeing this apparition of union, and Jacob will become, as we will see in the alternatively in a second, Jacob will become himself that element that unites everything together by being in the middle. Okay. Yeah, we have a couple of minutes, so let's read that. Wait, okay, good. Alternatively,
here Yud He Vav He was standing alav, upon him, upon Jacob.
not the ladder. God is not standing on the ladder, but God is standing on Jacob.
So that all would become a holy chariot, right, left, Jacob in the midst. an assembly of Israel, linking with them, as is written, I am Yud-He Vav-He, God of Abraham,
Next
your
page.
father, and God of Isaac, the land.
Right, the land, and that's like a stopping in the middle of the phrase. Look at 126, the verse concludes, the note.
Assembly of Israel linking with them, the land. The verse concludes, the land on which you lie, I will give to you and to your seed. The land symbolizes Shekhinah, also known as Assembly of Israel.
Okay, so what we have now in the full verse is, I am the eternal, Almighty God of Abraham, your father, Almighty God of Yitzchak, the land that upon which you lie, I will give to you and your seed. So now this is the what's called the Merkava, right? This is the moving throne that upon which God sits and moves throughout the cosmos and into the world. These are 4 elements, right? And the 4 elements are to the right, Abraham, to the left, Yitzchak, then the third wheel is Yaakov, and the last wheel is assembly of Israel, right? The assembly of Israel. Israel is Yaakov, and then the assembly of Israel is the 4th. And that's this idea of the collecting of the potency from Israel and receiving it into Shekhinah. As a persona, which biblical persona is that 4th wheel? David. David is the 4th wheel. David is Malchut. David is majesty, sovereignty, rulership. So he eventually will be the one who unites all of Israel together. That's the assembly of Israel. But at this point, what God is showing to Jacob is that Jacob is continuing to make the chariot, be constructed. He will be the partner along with his ancestors, Abraham and Isaac. We're going to look a little bit more into how that gets played out. Hopefully next time we'll continue at the top of 336. So we'll start at the bottom of but the alternatively again, God willing, next time. Okay? Okay. Sei gesund.
Josh Koach.
And